Hey everyone, quick little announcement here from Fishing the DMV. Our Weekend Warrior Club membership on Patreon is nearly full. There are only 12 membership spots still available. Once these spots are gone, they're gone, and I'll be closing the club to any new members until 2026. At that point, you can try to join again, but it'll be at a higher rate. So get your rates locked in now, and you'll gain access to our 5 fishing tournaments each year for Patreon members only, 5% off your orders to Jake's Bait and Tackle, 10% off your order to Tiger Crankbaits, 10% off your orders to Catoctin Creek Rods. You'll gain access to our private Facebook group community, loads of members only content, and of course, ad-free, commercial-free episodes of the show. You get all this for $6 a month, which is less than a pack of Cincos or a Jackhammer Chatterbait. Lock in these rates now because in 2026, I'm going to be increasing the rate to new members. And again, I'll give you an extra one here. I'll give you 8% off if you buy the membership for the year. So that'll be $66 for all of this value. There are only a few spots left, so hurry up and check out the link in the episode description. You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Monday Night Live. We are here March 10th. Happy Daylight Savings Time. I really believe, does this not mean like this is the beginning of really spring? It's so weird. Like there's temperatures we could go by. We could go by when people get, have their spring break, depending if you're in college or high school. To me, there's something about that time change when you walk outside after work and it's not pitch black and it's like, oh shit. And then you get that little hint, that little like dribble of warmer weather. Today it was almost 70 degrees, the first time all year up here in Northern Virginia, Maryland border area. My God, it feels so good to be outside again. So nice to we're finally getting those real spring days. And the fishing is really starting to heat up here. It really is. We've had so many cool events that have already happened. The Piedmont had their very first event of the year for the BFL circuit. I believe Tyler Trent won with a 2110 out there on Bugs Island. Absolutely fantastic weights. I mean, the weights there were actually pretty surprising for Bugs Island, which we'll definitely get into later on in the show. But that place is looking pretty good. Lake Norman had an event there for the North Carolina division. The Shenandoah division has not yet gone. That's going to be coming here pretty shortly. Lake Anna, the Elite 70s had their team event at Lake Anna. Huge shout out to Andrew White and his group for doing so well there. There's a lot that we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to wait for everybody to kind of filter on in here. Please, guys, if you want to, let me know how the audio sounds. So I need to raise it, lower it. How does this sound right now before I get started? And let me get, save that. Let me get this banner going up. Boom. And then as you guys know, this is going to be, we were supposed to have Mr. Campbell on tonight. Not Campbell. That's the next night. We were supposed to have Rob England on tonight. He was going to do a fishing report and talk to us about the Upper James River. Sadly, he said he came down with COVID. So, thoughts and prayers that he feels better. And then I'm going to try to get him back into the rotation. Next Monday, we have Billy Coles, Smith Mountain Guide Service. Billy Coles is going to be next week. So we got him says, raise it up a little bit. All right, dude, I'll raise it up a little bit. No problem there. So we have Billy Coles on next week. We're going to be talking about Smith Mountain Lake. We had this past weekend, we had the Kayak Show and Expo up at Jake's Bait and Tackle, which was a fantastic success. As always, it's so much fun to have that event, to see all of the kayak anglers from the area come in with their really cool pimped out rigs and just to be talking about kayak fishing again. We have the Bass Nation Kayak event starting up this weekend at a couple of the lakes that made the big list for Virginia. So, not to bury the lead at all, and we'll just get right into this bad boy right now. I put this up on my Instagram. I thought this would be kind of a cool little segue. Something I really wanted to talk about, which is the DWR came out with their list of the top lakes in Virginia. And so let me share my screen real quick and we'll get this going here. Eventually it will share. There we go. So Virginia just came out with its top reservoirs for Virginia, and this is all by catches per hour. So this is the best place to go to catch quality and quantity. Number one on the thing, without further ado, Occoquan Reservoir, the Res. Am I shocked? I'm not really shocked with this. That is pretty impressive there with that lake and what it's been able to do. Number 2 on the list was Sandy Reservoir. Sandy has been getting a lot of love. It's been sneaking slowly and slowly into the top of the list for a bunch of people. So that's pretty cool. Again, that's only a 700 acre plus lake. And this is all based on the Creel survey of 2024. Chesden came in at number 3 on the list with 47 CPU EP, which is super impressive. And then Briary is coming back. I think everyone's been talking about that for a while. There's not publicly, they've been talking about good old Briary Creek coming back. And this is the one that's actually interesting to me. Of this list, it's Leesville. The lake that I have been talking about, how long have I been talking about on this channel? Like, it seems like a sleeper because no one talks about it. How long have I been mentioning this on this channel about Leesville? Again, this is the lake that's underneath Smith Mountain Lake. It has a really interesting reverse flow that'll happen because it actually sucks water back into Smith Mountain Lake. So you can have some reverse current flows on there, which is quite interesting. But no one fishes it. It's underdeveloped. There's a lot of trees. There's a lot of floating timber and crap. So that to me was absolutely surprising. Something else that was interesting is this my Clater Lake at number 16? Wasn't this the lake that all of you in chat basically unanimously said was dog shit? Even me, I'm guilty of it too. Saying like, okay, just turn that into concrete, a big parking lot. It's slowly creeping up there, which is interesting. Smith Mountain Lake is at 7, which is I don't know about that. I feel like it should be a little bit higher. Mooney is up there, which makes sense if you live in the Fredericksburg area. It's interesting that Hunting Run though is not where I thought it would be, which is interesting. Or Nye. Now, Nye, potentially the reason it's not on there is you can't get a boat on there because the boat ramp sucks so much. That could possibly be it as well. And then Philpott. Philpott got up there, way up there. I have no idea what's going on with Philpott. But again, we got to keep in mind, what this list means. Again, if you guys don't know, this is just breaking news that the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources, this is their latest ranking of largemouth reservoirs in the area. And this is all based on determining the catch rate per hour. So how many fish you can catch. Not necessarily that you're going to be catching the biggest fish possible. That would be a completely different list that's already been put out. This is like catches per hour. What has the highest catch per hour? Occoquan Reservoir is there. Now, what is interesting is we will get into the major list a little bit later on, but it's going to be and we got ripping lips there. He says Hunting Run and Nye are only open for a portion of the year. That possibly could be it too. Let me make sure I got Virginia Department Wildlife Resources. Perfect. And then catch resources, catch rate per hour. Because as always, when we're on this show, we like to whip out the really, really cool stuff. I want to make sure I have the right stuff here. Now, this might be the older information. Damascus. Yeah. Cool. Now, here's some little bit older information that's from the website, but this is still kind of important. With Leesville, the largest bass population has been stable for many years. Most bass in the 13 to 17 inch range, but there are fish up to 22 inches. Electrofishing rates of bass is 15 inches plus are very good, which is very interesting because, again, that place doesn't get the same pressure. It's a decent sized reservoir as well, but I think it's because of all the debris and everything that's in there. It makes it really, really frustrating to actually fish. But that's somebody where we have been talking about that very consistently. And then you got Sandy River. Sandy River absolutely killed it. They said there was a total of 258 bass that were collected, and this was in the spring of 2023. This is the old study I'm going off of. I'll be pulling up the new study here in a minute, but this is just going off of Sandy River and Briary. Basically, the two heavy hitters I was kind of shocked on to get up as high as it did within the ratings. It was just really interesting to see that it got up that high. I don't think anybody was I think the biggest thing I'm shocked about with this whole list, again, is Crater Lake being up there. But it's not necessarily about the place that you can go to catch a state record. It's about how many fish per hour plus the size. So there's a variable there. If you have a lake on there that you could potentially catch a world record, maybe it's not on there if it doesn't have the same catch per hour rate, which is very, very interesting with this whole article. What this kind of means is something that we've been, again, talking about forever on the channel. There's a lot of places to fish in this area, a lot of places to fish. And you just got to get out there and go explore some of these newer bodies of water that you can go at. Let me pull this thing up here real quick. Here we go. And then the next biggest thing is the Trophy Bass Citations list, which was really, really interesting to me. So this thing right here, let me pull it up here. This is by Alex McCrickard. If you know him, he's been on the show a couple of times, good old Alex. And they talk about the top Virginia waters for trophy largemouth bass in 2024. This is from 2024, so if that makes sense for you. The first one on there on the list is Smith Mountain Lake. So again, just trying to kind of show you the compare and contrast here. These are larger bodies of water too. The second on the list is Briary Creek. Again, absolute heavy hitter. Lake Burton is on this list as well. Again, this is just purely trying to catch the biggest fish possible. Number 4 on the list is Sandy Reservoir, which is, again, 740 acres. Yeah, 740 acres. Number 5 on this list is Lake Anna. So these are the lakes right up on here that are the top 5 for just catching a citation size bass, which again, this list I have a little bit more issue with because I think Occoquan Reservoir should be on there. Sleeter's Lake, if you guys don't remember, 2 years ago, Sleeter's Lake was actually on this list in Purcellville, Virginia. It got bumped off, which I'm perfectly fine with because it won't get beat up as much as it could possibly be. The one that's very interesting to me, that's a part of this list is not bugs. Bugs make sense. I think there are some fish in there that you can catch. It's getting better. It really is. If these weights still hold up at the Piedmont Division, at the Shenandoah Division, at the North Carolina Division, at all these events that are happening this year, I think we start raising Kerr Reservoir up a little bit higher on our list. Little Creek, which is down near Hunter and SB, that thing is starting to tick up a little bit, which is kind of interesting to me as well. I don't know. What are you guys looking at with this list that really stuck out to you? To me, again, it's just Crater Lake being on the top of that. Briary, Sandy being up there. We've been talking about that for a while on the show. Leesville, I've been mentioning that should be hitting there. I mean, Occoquan Reservoir is rightfully so, should probably be the number 1 place. I think people that are up in this area just kind of get used to fishing this place, which kind of makes sense. Again, phone number is 667-307-8583. I'm going to open up the phone lines here. Very, very interesting stuff there. And that was kind of the first thing I just kind of wanted to open the show with, was talking about this list and where everything is. Everything seems to be about where it is. As you guys know, I'll be doing the river fishing reports for the Department of Wildlife Resources this year, the river fishing reports. So that's going to be really cool. We're going to be breaking down all of the rivers and, of course, Smith Mountain Lake, which... good little segue there. Smith Mountain Lake has had 2 10-pound largemouth pulled out of that bitch. 2 10-pound largemouth. Absolutely shocking that that's happening. Let me pull this up real quick for you guys. I want to show you this photo. And this is also on the Basscast as well. But over a 10-pound largemouth caught recently at the local cat event. Let me pull this bad boy up here for you guys to see. Share screen. All right, there we go. All right, absolutely insanely big fish right there. This thing is absolutely monstrous. This is a 10-pound largemouth that was just caught this past weekend at an event at Smith Mountain Lake. This is the second one. Jared Ward caught one back in February as well. This thing is absolutely massive. Let me zoom in on that bad boy a little bit there, just kind of show you guys. So this means 2. This means that there's been 2 largemouth over 10 pounds caught from Smith Mountain Lake. when people didn't think this would happen. And it really is testimony to the F1 program working. And you're seeing this huge uptick in fish of that caliber. And what does this mean when the professionals come there in May, when the BBT, the heavy hitters event? I mean, this is actually shaping up to be a legit heavy hitters event when it's not just potentially an 8-pounder that they could bring to the scale. They could bring a 10 potentially, which is awesome to actually see that could actually happen this year. And then we had one at the Chickahominy River. I think it was 2 weekends ago. There was a 10-pounder caught. I mean, we are probably in the best time to live in North Carolina, Virginia, or Maryland in this area to catch a fish of a lifetime or to have an absolutely great day. It's insane how many good fish are being caught right now in our local area, because you always remember the good old days. People always talk about the good old days, how things used to be. What if we're in the good old days right now? I mean, I think we're really approaching some of the best time to be an angler in this surrounding area. The department really is trying to do their best to really nurture these different fisheries. The F1 program is in full swing on the Smith Mountain Lake, on Lake Anna, a couple other places. It was there for 10 plus years on the James River, and it's still kicking out amazing fish. Then you also have, Albemarle Sound. Black Bay is absolutely killing it as well. It's just been an absolute blast to see how well this place has been fishing. So that's just something that I wanted to kind of talk about with you guys there a little bit. But I don't know, it's interesting. Fishing there around here has been fantastic. The weather's starting to warm up now. We're going to be getting that better fishing weather. And I also want to talk about some of the stuff that's going on in the professional world. We had a couple of interesting stupidity things. Scott Martin. That was interesting, getting caught on a hot mic, potentially doing something stupid there. I just can't believe. I don't know. Why are people shocked that Scott Martin would be doing something like that? That's his MO. He always pushes the rules. He always pushes them as far as possible. He was trying to get ahead of the PR with what was happening. That just seems to me about right. I just think the punishments for something like that are a little antiquated, because you'll see the headlines of they're breaking the rules. They're breaking the rules. Not all rules are created equal. That's why you have a misdemeanor, and that's why you have manslaughter. Both are breaking the rules, but one is a little bit worse than the other. And with what he did, I think potentially the way you should approach that is having just a weight penalty. Hey, listen, you're not being DQ'd from the event, and we're not going to post all over that, you're a rule breaker and shame. Hey, listen, this happened. We're going to give you a 2-pound penalty to start the event, or a 3-pound. Figure it out. But you can still fish the whole event. You're the last boat draw every day. There are things you can do to be like, you did break the rules for this action, so we are going to penalize you, but we're going to still allow you to fish the whole damn event. I just think that was a little, for that type of violation, I think it's a little nuclear, I guess, to potentially just get rid of their whole event, especially when the rule is so vague on if you're talking to somebody, how a conversation is heard, how a conversation is interpreted. And then it comes down to motive. For better or worse, a lot of that will just come down to motive and how you believe it went down. Again, number here, guys, if you want to call in, is 667-307-8583, talking about Scott Martin. And then we had that idiot in the NPFL event that literally asked his cameraman, hey, how are they biting? And then boom, he gets dinged. Why would you ask your cameraman? That is such a... that's pretty stupid. But again, how are they biting? Do you disqualify them, or do you just give them a 2-pound penalty? Or a 3-pound penalty? I don't know. Just the whole DQing of an event to me just sits wrong, because it's such a hardcore punishment. But then what's the next escalation? You just get rid of them for the whole year? You fine them? Maybe that's like a better thing, is you just fine them. Hey, listen, you can still fish the event, but you get a $2,000 penalty. Something like that. In other professional sports, they'll fine you. Or they'll have you sit out a quarter. Or they'll have you sit out one game. But if you're going to sit out one game, that's a heck of an offense. So I think the whole rule system there needs to definitely be changed up and adjusted a little bit, personally speaking. it could use a little bit of loving from a person that knows actually how to create a set of rule books that have actually fished or competed in any other sport before. But again, that's just my view on it. You know, I'm just a guy on Instagram. Got a couple of questions here up on Instagram. Let me get this up here. We got Slug Debug on Instagram that says, interesting to see Diasket up that high. Yeah, dude, there's so many small reservoirs on that list, which blew my mind. Damascus was 13. It's a 1,000-acre lake. Let's see. CPUE is 14 per hour, which is not bad. Again, it's a 1,000-acre lake. That's pretty big. And that's something else that's interesting about this list. In the top 5, 2 out of the top 5 lakes are sub 1,000 acres. Think about that. Sandy, 740. Briary, 840 basically. That's insane. The biggest lake that's in the top 10 is Smith Mountain Lake at 20,000 acres. Everything else is like mostly sub 2,000 acres, which is impressive. And that's the thing about Virginia. In our area, we have so many lakes that are in that nice 2,000 and below range. And, you know, I broke this last week too. I didn't really break, everyone knew about it. We have a new reservoir coming in a couple of years. And what they're doing is supposed to be over 1,000 acres. They're using it to help with water for the area, but also for flood control. It's going to be over 1,000 acres, a brand new reservoir. They're flooding in, they're keeping all the brush, all the trees, they're flooding it. That's going to be really cool in 15 years, maybe 10 years, maybe less than that. That's over 1,000 acres. That's going to be awesome. And I mean, because you look at Mooney. I mean, let's see, get Mooney back up on this list. Mooney is 500 acres. Yeah, 500 acres. So double the size of that. We're getting like double the size of Mooney in Virginia. That's really freaking cool that you can still do that. But Virginia is big enough. And I've been a proponent of this. Maybe we can't make right now 48,000 acre lakes. I think you can make a lot of 2,000 to 3,000 acre lakes. I don't think there's a problem there in making that size lakes. You can do that. It's good for everything. You can put houses on it, so all the homeowners and all the HOAs are going to be happy and tickled pink. You can have it for water, and you can have it for recreation. And if you put 2 or 3 lakes that are in that 2,000 acre kind of range, that's perfect. I mean, Philpot on here, and this is what's funny, Philpot is 2,800 acres, and Occoquan Reservoir is 21. So, and again, that's a whole other thing, because Philpot, you're allowed to use whatever engine you want. You want to use a 300 horsepower engine? Go for it. Send it. Occoquan, you got to use a 9.9, you know, allegedly, wink, wink. So again, that's just all interesting there. That's all interesting there. Dude, you definitely got your money's worth on that question. But yeah, Scott Martin thing, I just think that's something that I think they need to change the rules a little bit, maybe adjust them a little bit, especially since these guys are doing this for a living. Make the punishment on a first offense or something like that a little bit less. Have them just get a weight penalty. Have them get a fine, something like that, and then let them fish the event. Let them fish the complete event because of one little hiccup. It does, especially with how it goes down. Because if allegedly what you're supposed to do is, if a conversation like that happens, you're supposed to just walk away, just literally wind sprint away from people. Well, that's interesting, because you want these people to be the face of your franchise, but then you're not going to let them talk. Or what if somebody is just going to be a dick, so to speak, and purposely start talking to them about information? I don't know, man. It's interesting stuff. We got Randy Philpot. Yeah, Philpot, dude. Philpot is back. Your Philpot made the list somehow, some way. So that was pretty cool. And then the NPFL event, Sandy Cooper, Jason Christie, 82 freaking pounds, absolutely insane. I think this was everything people wanted from the NPFL. You went in the spring to a shallow, stumpy place. What more is there? Like, this was the perfect world, I think, for the NPFL, and I think it was a really good showing for their format. I've always thought, and I've said this before on the show, with the NPFL, this first year is going to be their spike. It's going to be insane. I think it's going to be that weird curiosity, morbid curiosity, however you want to put it, to see this cool new format with no live scope and all that shindig. So they had to have good numbers. I think, for these events. They just had to, because again, you're doing this crazy new format. You needed to have a good showing on how this went. And I think what the NPFL did, it was perfect. Again, I remember we had Watson, and we're talking off camera a little bit before we discussed him on Basscast Radio, because you guys know I'm a co-host on Basscast Radio podcast as well, because basically this is all I do. I don't get to go fishing. I'm just locked in the basement talking fishing. And I mentioned, like, it's interesting how they set up the schedule now for bass, that it's more balanced between scope and no scope lakes. And he was like, oh, before we didn't call it like scope or no scope lakes. We called it this or this. And I was like, but that's what it is. It's having a home run ballpark or a pitcher's ballpark. And when you go to Toledo Bend in February, when they're all offshore, stacked up, yes, scope will play better. Of course, it's more of an advantage that way. If you are out on the St. Lawrence River in the middle of the ocean, of course, having scope is a benefit. But what I like so much about NPFL and all these what the NPFL did and what Bass did is like, you know what? Maybe we should have a balance where we'll put a Mississippi River where you could probably win on a frog. Maybe some guy will scope. If McCluskey was there, he'd win on scope, but you could potentially win with a frog. And I thought the NPFL did really good for this first event. Going with Santee Cooper like that, 82 plus pounds for Jason Christie, absolutely amazing. We got Paul in the chat. Paul, hey Paul, how you doing, boss? Great show, guys, on Friday night. Really sorry I didn't comment. I was with my wife, but it was a really, really good show. The NPFL stream just showed that 8 hours of no forward-facing sonar is just as boring to watch as 8 hours of forward-facing sonar. Yeah, pretty much. It did. Pessimistically, you're right. It did show that as a factor. I think it also had good viewing. And basically, Paul, what I was saying beforehand is this was a really good first event for them to show this new format. And I think the ratings were extremely good for it. It's everything, if I was an executive at the NPFL, I wanted. Some drama, having Jason Christie win, really good weights there, a shallow water, just a seeing people flipping and stuff. There were, of course, people offshore as well, but I think it was a good event. The problem is they need to sustain this all year. If there's a huge drop off, it's going to be a problem in their ratings, because would you pivot back then? So hopefully these ratings stay up there and that this format actually finds its niche. We got Randy in the chat. MLF coming to Smith Mountain Heavy Hitters in May. Yes, I have the biologist fishing report. We went through line by line for Smith Mountain Lake. That I just got confirmation from the department. That episode's going to be dropping a little bit before May, probably in April, to promote the Heavy Hitters event. So that's going to be really, really cool. Again, there was 2 10-pounders caught out of Smith Mountain Lake this year. It's never happened. It hasn't happened like that in a long time. There used to be a bunch of 8s. Now there have been 2 10s. This place is starting to just go parabolic. It's really, really cool to see what's going on at Smith. I'm really happy for it. And then, of course, Okeechobee. I was depressed with Okeechobee. I'm putting on my hat right now, which is my conservation hat, not my, was this cool to watch what they did. It's sad because Okeechobee's not fishing like it used to. It's just not. And it's just really, really sad. I don't know if it's the environmental issues, it's the grass spraying, it's the way they're holding the lake. Just from the lake standpoint, I was just sad about it. Huge shout out to Brandon Palaniuk and what they did, where they camped. That event, really just textbook Brandon Palaniuk event there. Just from how the lake fished, I was just kind of depressed with it. I just feel like we're not seeing the Okeechobee of old, and that's going to take a long time for us to get that back. It's going to need stable water conditions to be able to get the grass to grow back, so we can get people back, growing back out there. But besides that, it was an okay event. I was just meh. To me, that was just a meh event. But this is the event I want to talk about. Kentucky Lake. Okay. Okio won with 66 pounds, 14 ounces on Kentucky Lake. If I showed you some of these bags that were caught, you might think, are we talking about the St. Lawrence River? No. Tom, are we talking about the Great Lakes? And I'd be like, no. What we are talking about is Kentucky freaking Lake, which I'm going to say it right now. Is this the new smallmouth capital west of the Mason-Dixon line? I am absolutely stunned, flabbergasted, all the above with this lake's turnaround. Let me see if I can pull this up here for you guys, just to give you guys a little showing of entire screen. All right, there we go. These are some absolutely monster smallmouth that were caught. Let me try to find this one video I want to show you guys. This one right here, thumbnail wise, I'm not going to start it, but right there, he caught right there over a 25-pound bag of smallmouth. The smallmouth in this event was insane. And what you guys don't understand, just for a quick little recap, in the early 2000s, Kentucky Lake was probably that and Cayuga, maybe, or Chickamauga, sorry, probably put crankbait fishing, Kevin Van Dam ledge fishing on the freaking map. It was absolutely insane. And then we had the Asian carp problem, and then this lake just died. It really did. And there's a multitude of factors. And I said this on a post last week. Growing up at that time period and seeing what Kentucky Lake was, and it dying, and it being one of those lakes that's so important to bass fishing, and it coming back as what, a smallmouth oasis. I did not have that in my bingo cards of it coming back like that. It's really, really cool to see the evolution of Kentucky Lake, and that it's coming back. And if it's going to be the new smallmouth capital west of the Mason-Dixon line, I am all here for that. We do have a caller now. Let me try to get him on here. All right, we got a caller, 443-876. You're on.
Hey, what's up, Tom?
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing? Good. You got to talk about Kentucky Lake, and I wanted to call in because that was freaking phenomenal.
Yeah.
So with the smallmouth, I think it was Mark Menendez that explained like why the smallmouth have dominated. And it was really because of the Asian carp. So essentially, what that did was the Asian carp taking over the areas where the bait would normally sit, pushed that bait and made that bait more pelagic, which allowed the smallmouth to really take off. So, pretty sure that was Mark Menendez that explained that one time, or his theory of it.
Did you ever see this happening?
Mark Menendez, or Kentucky Lake camera. So there were always big smallmouth in Kentucky Lake. There just weren't that many of them.
Yeah.
Not like there is now. But yeah, there's always been huge smallmouth, up at the dam, Pickwick Dam, and it's just that pushing that bait offshore and really
game changer.
Really catered to those more pelagic smallmouth. Yeah. So that was a freaking. I enjoyed watching that more than any of the pro series that were on this week.
I did that. That was my favorite one.
NPFL, we had NPFL on Santee and BPT on Lake Murray, and I spent most of the weekend watching Kentucky Lake because it was cool. We talk about. I know we were just talking about how forward-facing sonar can dominate, and you would think that forward-facing sonar would have dominated that. And sure, it won, but a lot of the guys that were in the top 10 were not using forward-facing sonar. Mm-hmm. A lot of them were cranking. They were cranking. Laker Hal was running to Pickwick Dam and throwing a swim bait. Did you hear about his run?
No, I didn't.
Speaking of Laker Hal, 140 miles from takeoff.
Good God.
One way. Yeah. He fished on the last day, he fished for 2.5 hours. And did not work out for him on the last day, but I mean he was in second place going into the last day.
It was just
taking 130 miles on one way.
It's insane because that's always like when I was growing up, like that was the place. Like so many championships were on every major event. Kentucky Lake was the shit, and yeah, I mean it died, but I never thought it would come back with you're going to win with 25-pound smallmouth consistently, potentially in the future, not largemouth. I mean it's a cool nature finds a way kind of thing. Yeah, I really thought this lake was going to be dead for a while until they figured out the Asian carp thing. So I am very happy to see some kind of resurrection.
Well, I know the Asian carp population has been dwindling a bit.
Yeah, it's
It
been
has
going
been
down.
going down thanks to a lot of conservation effort and establishing a commercial market for them to really help keep that population in check, and that's I think has had a lot to do with the bounce back as well. And again, shout out to Mark Menendez for really spearheading that. That's his home lake, and he does care about it immensely, and he has put in a lot of time and effort to get funding and really help attack that Asian carp problem.
It was neat because it's almost like seeing a new lake again. Watching live and stuff, just the way they were fishing that thing, it just really reminded me. Just I don't know, I was reminiscing, I guess, about older events watching there. So yeah, so much of it it just captured me more than watching Christie or Lake Murray again. And I think you kind of encapsulated why.
Well, let's be honest. It's more fun to watch watch people catch smallmouth than catch largemouth.
Oh, dude, it is. It is, especially in that water, because you're so used to seeing them in gin clear pools where you could see them start pulling, but in that water, because of their coloration, you didn't see them until they were basically in the boat. And all of a sudden they got like a 5-pounder. It's like, holy crap. So yeah, it was, some of those fish, dude, were freaky freaks.
Yeah, there were some big ones. There were some big largemouths caught too.
I was surprised about that.
There were some. The guy who won, I can't remember his name.
Yu-Gi-Oh, Yui
Aoki.
Aoki, yeah.
He had a big largemouth on the last day. I mean, he had like a 6-pounder. Which, I mean, Kentucky Lake standards is not big.
Well, I mean, the new Kentucky Lake standards, it might be.
Yeah, right.
But still, I mean, you're right though. What do you think of the DQ stuff? Because I think, with the Scott Martin thing,
what do I think of that?
Yeah, because so here I'll lay it out for you. I think
lay it out for me.
I think there should be a new kind of penalty where it's like, hey, listen, for something like this, depending on the circumstance, we either fine you, we have you start out with a like negative 4-pound reduction or something like that, or you're the last boat out, but we're not going to take the whole event away from you. I feel like that should be like a level up to your punishment for a communication thing. Again, I think intent has to be there of like what actually happened, but it just seems a little too over the top.
So two things. One, I would tend to agree that there may be different levels. So did you see the guy who got disqualified from NPFL?
That was hilarious. Yeah.
So like he literally just asked the bystander if his buddy was catching him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's clear no intent there.
Exactly.
So in a situation like that, yeah, I think that would apply. In the Scott Martin situation, from what I've heard from people who have seen the video of what it was, he probably deserved it. I like Scott Martin. I love watching Scott Martin. I love his YouTube channel. But there, you see all the fanboys in the comments, going, "Oh, he doesn't need any information on Okeechobee. He knows more about Okeechobee." Like, I don't think they realize how much a little bit of information helps someone who knows the lake that well.
And this is his MO.
So especially on Okeechobee, it is. And especially on Okeechobee, and he's asking about water clarity. And if anybody who's ever fished Okeechobee knows that water clarity is the number one thing that you look for on Okeechobee. Because if the water's dirty, they don't eat. And that could have huge ramifications. That could, if depending on the area. And I'm waiting for that video to get leaked because it's going to be fun to watch. depending on that, the area he asked about, that could eliminate like an entire day of practice, and they only have 2.5 days of practice.
Mm-hmm.
So that could have huge implications. I think that one was deserving, and I think they allowed him to save face a little bit by self-reporting, because from what I understand, Bassmaster had this video before the tournament.
Well, and the thing is, like, it is because of the family, they were going to have to do something like that, work out a deal with him, but we've had 3 major DQs and 3 like. Oh,
so I want to get to point 2. So my point 2 is I'm so glad that they're cracking down and really holding people accountable, because it's been such an issue for the past 2 or 3 years. With the shadiness that's going on, and if they really crack down, and they did they just lay down the law and they don't make exceptions, that's going to cut out what a lot of people do. They're doing more lie detectors. They're handing out these like just no BS punishment. Like, you broke the rule, you're out, you're done. You're DQ'd from the tournament. And that is going to set a precedent going forward that it sucks for the people that I really like the 2 people that it happened to. Like, I really like Matt Herron. He's a friend of Bass and Beer, and it sucks that he got DQ'd. But down the road, it hurts now, but down the road, I think it's going to make Bass better. Or maybe not make better is not a good term, but it's going to heighten the integrity of Bass.
And this is my problem with,
in my opinion.
And this is the problem with rules like this that are not clear cut. There is a lot of gray area, and it should be a case by case basis. When you try to enforce this, there's going to be.
Have you read the new rule?
Yeah, actually, we could bring.
Have you read the new rule though?
We could bring.
There's not a lot of gray area. There's not a lot of gray area in that rule.
Information rule, because I think this is. Well, we're gonna pull this right up here.
If you go to the Bassmaster website and go to the Elite Series information page, you can find the Elite Series rules on there.
Information.
And it is pretty clear cut, and it says the last line is any infraction of this rule will result in disqualification.
Okay, all right.
It's the only rule in there that doesn't like go back to like the penalties description. It's the only rule in there that names the penalty in the rule.
All right, so I have it up right here, December 1st, 2024. Elite Series anglers and Bassmaster Classic qualifiers cannot solicit, gather, or intentionally receive any information to gain a competitive advantage from anyone other than another competitor in the tournament. Is that the rule that you're saying?
Yes.
So the thing is where it says solicit, gather, or intentionally. I feel like there's a lot of wiggle room right there.
No, I think gather. So it's solicit, gather, or so it's gather kind of covers everything.
What's the definition? So you cannot
you cannot get information.
You cannot get information. You can't intentionally receive. That's the thing right there that's very, very interesting to me with intentionally receive. Because if I am sitting next to my boat.
But it says.
Go on.
It says or intentionally receive.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes. Or intentionally receive.
Right.
So if I am sitting next to my boat in a Walmart parking lot and somebody starts talking to me and I receive information, depending on the individual that reports me, could be how that thing goes down in a court of law.
I've heard this argument a billion times, and this is not a new rule. They know how to handle conversations off the water. Everybody, that was in the Facebook comments on Bassmaster's Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you can't stop somebody from coming up and giving information. They've literally had this rule. This rule has been in effect for 10 years. They just clarified it. I can tell you that me and Kevin Parsons were talking to Wesley Gore when he was here for the Open a couple of years ago. We were out fishing on the gunpowder. He was out there practicing. The first words out of his mouth were, "I can't get any information. Please don't say anything about fishing."
Well, then what would happen if you said something about
Literally
fishing?
the first words out of his mouth. You need to end the conversation.
See, that's where it's just that, because that to me is that gray area of example, pivoting back to what happened in the NPFL. Technically, did he not break the rules?
Technically, yeah, and technically he broke the rules, yes.
But like I said, and
In
this
the NPFL?
Yeah, in the NPFL. And that's where I'm saying, like,
because according to their rules, what they said was you can and this is how Duncan explained it, was you cannot ask someone outside of the tour. You can't ask a third party how someone else in the tournament is doing.
But again, I agree with you there.
Like you can't ask for information about that.
And I think we're just kind of circling back to the
But
beginning.
the intent wasn't that, right?
Exactly. I think, and this is coming back to my issue with this, is the intent. The intent. And that's why I think there needs to be a level, a scale of punishment to where, listen, you're asking how your friend's doing. We have to dock you a pound or 2 pounds or whatever. What Scott Martin did. Okay, fine. Yeah. We're going to go hardcore. I really feel like there should be more of a floating scale to this, because not every information thing should be treated the same. Because you're right. I think as a professional,
I can agree with that.
Yeah. I just feel like when you talk about intentionally receiving information, that to me is where it's classic example is if you are a person that has a TV show or whatever, you're really in the public eye, you're going to get more closed off and not going to be as susceptible to public conversations, meet and greets and things like that. If they go too hard in this.
I don't think they will, though.
Are you sure?
Because this has been a rule for 10 years. They've navigated this rule for 10 years with little to no issues, and I feel like when you have a leg to stand on. So if you say, like, if you do everything correctly, right? And somebody comes up to you in the parking lot, you tell them, "I cannot receive information. Please don't give me any information." And then they decide to do it anyway. And you tell them, I can't get any information. I'm sorry. And you go to the tournament director and say, "Hey, this is what happened. I explained to them I couldn't get information. They blurted it out. I left the conversation." I think as fans also have to have some respect for these anglers as well. And we can't have the entire responsibility being on these pros. We all look. 90% of the people who watch tournament fishing know the rule. Hard 90%, because they're tournament anglers. Most people, aside from a few like of Milken fans or Scott Martin fans who have those big YouTube followings, they either follow tournaments or they fish tournaments, because nobody watches 8 hours of tournament fishing if they're not into tournaments.
That's fair. That's fair.
So, but
Adrian says it was 3-week-old information. Adrian on Instagram says it was 3-week-old information. That's irrelevant at that point. That's not the point. It's still, he did break the law. I mean, that's regardless whether information was good or not. He did break the law. I'm not saying he didn't break the law, Adrian. I'm just saying like the severity of punishments and stuff like that. That's it. But yeah, continue. Because again, I guess.
But what can you do if it's water clarity and you know how water clear? So here, just to play devil's advocate on what Adrian said there, if you are an expert on that body of water and you know that water's dirty, I know the conditions. The way the wind's blowing, that's going to stay dirty by the time the tournament rolls around.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing the water as much as Scott does, a piece of information 3 weeks prior can still be incredibly useful based on just the amount of information that he knows about that lake. He knows that lake better than anyone in the world, most likely. I won't say that there's not somebody, but is a strong argument that he knows that lake better than anybody in the world, except for maybe his dad.
Yeah, that's a
A
fair
little
argument.
piece of information to somebody like that can go a long way, even if it is 3 weeks old, because he knows if it's dirty, it's going to take X amount of days to clean up.
Mm-hmm.
Or if the wind blows, that area is not going to clean up. Or if that water's clear, but they're calling for an east wind, that's going to dirty that water up. So that's not going to be good, come tournament time, because we have this east wind coming in. There's so many things that somebody who's it's like telling me something on the flats, or telling you something on Big Slack.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we can take that information, even if it's a couple of weeks old, and that's really, we can really turn that into a key point for when we go out practicing for that tournament.
I agreed.
I'm not saying it did or did not help him. I'm just saying the probability of it helping him is very high, because he knows so much about that body of water.
Yeah, and
but again,
and the
agree
argument,
with you. There should be differing. Go ahead.
No, you go finish.
I agree with you. That there should be varying levels of punishment. The Matt Herron stuff, from what I understand, and I'm sure there's a lot more to that story. Is that he was talking to a friend of his that lives down there, and they just there was no intent, right? But it did happen. So where do you draw the line? Do you is it, oh well, this was not, do you have to look at like what the information was when you're talking about those varying levels of punishment? Do you have to look at what the information was? Do you have to look at the situation? Do you have to look at, how do you keep that black and white?
I'd have to be,
because that's been the issue for the last 3 years, right? There's too much, there's all this gray area. And I've heard a lot of stories about some people on the Elite Series doing some really shady stuff. But how do you keep that black and white so that you can fairly administer punishment to anyone?
I would, off the top of my head, it would be like a strike system, probably like 1 or 2, 3 strikes. Because if you're doing, let's say, a pound penalty, let's say you're doing a pound penalty as the first level, you can be way more liberal in that punishment, because you could be like, hey, listen, we got a whiff of this is what happened, so we're automatically docking you blank amount of weight, boom. Because you're not gutting them of the event and potentially of AOI points. So that's a classic berth, all that stuff. You're not completely nuking their career, but your spotlight is like, hey, we know what you did. We caught you, but this is your first offense or something like that. Boom, we're slapping you with this. And then go from there. I feel like if they had a punishment that's a little bit less severe, they would be way more willing to dish it out and make it a scene, because guess what? You still get to talk about, why did Matt Herring have to be the last boat out, or why does he have this docked point? Well, it's because he did this. So you're still publicly shaming him, so to speak, but you're not nuking his year as a first go route. I don't know.
Yes, I agree. With not nuking, you're nuking their season essentially. I agree with maybe like a strike system, definitely not pounds, because that can have depending on the body of water, say like a 1 pound. If it's a 1 pound penalty, if they're on the Sabine, a 1 pound penalty, you're done.
Yeah,
I mean that's huge. That's huge on the Sabine, but on someplace like Fork, a 1 pound penalty is not really much at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
My idea that I spoke about, I think I spoke about this on our show a couple weeks ago. For like a first offense, 4 hours.
Mm.
You lose half a day.
I like that.
So you lose half a day of fishing. You still get to fish 4 hours. And that gives you plenty of time to fish that day. You may not be able to do, you may miss that shad spawn in the morning, but that's your penalty. And then, I feel like if it's multiple offenses, like there needs to be even harsher penalties. So like you said, maybe like a 3-strike system. Okay. It's, half a day DQ from the tournament for your 3 strikes. And then any offense after that, like you're gone.
Yeah,
like you're not allowed back on the elite stage.
You're
Because
gonna
when
be
you
on the
get to a
list.
point, like if it's happened 3 times, you've done it all. You're doing it on purpose.
I agree. And we got a great,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, we got a great statement here on Instagram as well. It's kind of like what happened, and this is not necessarily the same, but kind of what happened to Brandon Polnick early in his career on the Mississippi River, where he got DQ'd for culling issues in state lines. I actually remember that because I think the event after that he won on the St. Lawrence River. But yeah, now I think that's a state.
Was Mississippi.
Yeah, Mississippi, but there was a state issue, I believe. But the issue was he made an honest mistake with culling, and it potentially could have screwed his season over if he didn't win the next event. Now, again, that could be a state's issue
Correct.
there when it comes to how they handled that, but maybe that was a little bit too severe of a punishment there. And I think that's what we're getting at here is like there should be...
So he broke a state law.
Yeah.
So Minnesota state law at the time, and it's been rectified since. Minnesota state law said you cannot call fish. So if you're in the Minnesota line, if you're over that line, you cannot call. And if you break state or local regulations, you're going to have your weights DQ'd for that day. That's part of the Elite Series rule, and it was an honest mistake. He thought he was in Wisconsin waters when he called the fish, and he was not. And he calls that fish, and he gets his weight DQ'd for that day. And then, like you said, he wins the St. Lawrence the next day. And funny enough, this is kind of a funny story about that. So he gets DQ'd for calling a fish in that tournament on the Mississippi, and then the very next tournament he gets a 2-pound penalty because he forgets to call a fish.
Dude,
so
that was crazy.
It's kind of funny how that works.
Yeah.
back to back tournaments.
The guts to drive that far, man. Like, I mean, I guess he had nothing to lose, but to do what he did, I mean, I think he set the standard, honestly, for making those long runs to the lake. I think that was like the first one for the elites that did it.
I mean,
that's a long time ago.
Yeah, he ran from Waddington to Henderson Bay.
Yeah, like, dear God.
That is a long run.
Oh my God.
It's a 25-minute run from Chameau Bay to Henderson Bay. And like Chameau Bay is in the lake.
Dude, I couldn't do
like
that.
It's a half. I mean, it's probably from the mouth of the river to Henderson Bay itself is that's a 40-minute run. So just in the lake, you're running 40 minutes if it's calm.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's another hour. If it's calm, another hour up to Waddington, and it's not it. That run to Waddington is never calm because there's so much pleasure boat traffic, like in the American Narrows.
Oh, dude, it's just.
I mean, you'll see. It can be perfectly calm for 2/3 of the run. You get to the American Narrows, and there's like 4-footers because a 100-foot yacht just went through. I've never the biggest boats I've ever seen up there. And then plus you have barge, you have or not barge traffic, but like the large ships that go through there.
It's insane.
So that was a crazy, almost. I mean, that's like Laker how. I mean, did you see on Saturday how windy it was?
Oh, it was insane.
I mean, it was pretty choppy out there, and he still made a 130-mile run.
Yeah, that is not my style. I don't know if I could do that.
I don't know if I have the confidence in myself to take 5 hours of my 8-hour day just driving my boat. Like the confidence the confidence in being able to catch my fish in 2 or 3 hours is like I think I lack that. It gives me anxiety just thinking about it.
Okay, and you know, speaking of you know, big rough water and kind of the season starting up here, man. Bugs Island is off to a good start. Looking at the weights, it took, if you wanted to get in the top 10, you needed over 14 pounds, which is the first time in a long time Kerr has been like that. It took 21 pounds to win. McCluskey won the Gaston Cat, which is like below that, with almost 25 pounds. So it's not Gaston level yet, but that's pretty remarkable for Kerr. So I don't know. For everyone listening right now, you know, I shit on that like pretty hard, rightfully so, but maybe this place is going to be starting to turn around here with some better weights. We will see with that. Has there been any big tournaments on the Upper Bay yet, or are we still waiting for that?
No, I think the first tournament on the Upper Bay is my club open that we hold every year. That is the 29th. There's a Potomac Teams tournament this weekend on the Potomac. So those will be like the first bigger tournaments going on as far as like open tournaments. I was actually on the Potomac yesterday, and that was not fun.
Yeah.
It is dirty everywhere. The tide is blown out, and there were 3 to 4 footers on the river at noon.
So yeah, I see one comment. So guys, I'm going to let you guys know now. So for the Bay and the Potomac in particular, the reason you don't have tournaments in February, March, and stuff like that, generally speaking, is called small craft advisory warning. It is really hard, I think, if you're a tournament director, to try to schedule on those places early in the spring, because it's just, the weather can be so hard and fickle.
Yes. So I can tell you that I've had probably three open tournaments scheduled in March on the Potomac, and all 3 have been canceled. Like in the last 10 years. And it's springtime, that wind blows, and the water gets gnarly, and it's not worth anybody getting hurt for it. Some people say that it's the responsibility of the person that's out there, that's fishing. But as a tournament director, like I can't expect everyone to make good decisions.
Yeah, and that's something where, again, one of the things I thought the PBT did great, I wish more people would adopt, is rough water. Let people trailer to the ramps that they want to trailer to. Again, it's little things that could be adjusted for the bigger organizations. I know local and stuff, they can't really do that, but to keep things going. Because some of these conditions, I mean, again, from refereeing, from being a umpire for 12 years, if you err on the side of, hey, for liability, we can't let you do blank because we don't want people to die, I will always be okay with that. Personally, if a term church is like, it's just too dangerous, it's like, fine. Like, you're erring on the side of caution. It's better to do that than be the other idiot guy that runs the Toyota at Okeechobee when 2 people or 1 person gets killed. You don't really want to have that on your conscience.
Right. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's especially easy for me as a tournament director, because I am the stupid guy who will run from the gunpowder to the flats in 4 footers. So I just think about it that way. Like, would I be, how comfortable would I be in that water out there? Mm-hmm. So I'll go out in some pretty extreme conditions. So like, if it's anything that would make me uncomfortable, I know, like, we're not sending anyone. Like, I'll go on anything. Like, it doesn't, I don't really care. But if it makes me uncomfortable fishing, and some of it I look at too is like wind direction, right? So, they're calling for 25 mile an hour gusts, but it's blowing from the west. Well, I know if I have a tournament out of heavy grace, 25 mile an hour west wind, is not going to affect that part of the bay as much as it's going to affect like the gunpowder area of the bay proper. So there's a lot of stuff that you have to think about when canceling these tournaments. But again, when you get on the Potomac, it gets ugly, and it gets ugly quick. The Potomac's harder to schedule on than the Upper Bay for sure.
Oh, yeah. I think there was some article back when I think it was 2010. I got to find it. Like the Potomac was like one of the top 5, top 10 dangerous places to run. It was like Lake Erie, Santee Cooper was on there, which is surprising, and the Potomac, just because of how that place sets up with the wind and the tide. It can get bitchy real quick.
Well, I think a lot of it's because it runs north to south.
Yeah.
And you think about it in the spring, most of our winds are north or south. You either get that north wind coming down, it blows, blows down the river. And when that tide starts coming in, if it's blowing down the river, anything from Belmont and below is pretty much unrunnable. I mean, yesterday it was rough enough. I was like 35 miles an hour from Belmont back to Mattawoman.
Yeah, it's not
at
fun.
Like noon.
And this is where, like, for everyone listening, where you ask me, like, people ask me, like, why don't you fish the teams or whatever, blah blah blah. I just don't want to fish the same place 78,000 times. When, as I've shown and you've shown, like, there's so many cool places. There's always a place in Maryland, Virginia that's popping off and doing well. And so it's like Lake Anna right now. Go to Lake Anna. You'll keep all your teeth. You won't lose your lower unit. Go do that. Or, yeah, like you said, maybe go to Conowingo or the Upper Bay. Don't go to the Potomac right now when it's this nasty. There's plenty of cool places to go fishing that they're starting to pop. Smith Mountain Lake. I mean, that place is really starting to go right now. It's, I mean, 10 pounders. That's insane.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I wouldn't have been on the Potomac yesterday if I have a tournament down there in 2 weeks. So,
is that for the Federation?
That was really the only reason. TBS.
Okay.
So that's our first TBS tournament of the year, on the 22nd. So I don't fish down there a lot this time of year. Usually I kind of stay around. I stay around home more, or I don't really. Yeah, I pretty much just stay around. I don't really travel much this time of year, but I probably should next year. That's in my plans. Fishing a lot less around here next year and more. I'm going to try to travel a little more, but
where are you going to go?
Regardless, I don't know yet. One of the things that I really want to do, I want to fish the Skeeter Runners tournament, and that's usually in May on Lake Fork.
Oh, that'd be fun.
So I might go down and do that. I love Lake Fork. That place is awesome.
Dude, that sounds like
I've had the privilege of fishing there last year, and it was unbelievable. Crazy, because by Lake Fork standards, we didn't do anything, but by Maryland standards, we did awesome. We fished it for 2 days before we had a tournament on Rayburn, so we went down early while Rayburn was off limits. Fish Fork for 2 days, and we had 23 pounds the first day and 24 pounds the second day. And by Texas standards, nothing, right? But for two Maryland guys, that was pretty awesome.
Dude, that's really impressive. All right, boss.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a good time.
Dude, yeah. Thank you so much for calling in. As always, though, Bass and Beer Radio. Do a quick little promotion, boss. What do you guys got coming up next?
What do we have in the pipeline? Nothing crazy that I know of. We're working on a few things. So we have, we're working on getting a couple of really cool guests. It's just a matter of getting the schedule to line up. So keep an eye out for that. And I'm not giving out any spoilers on that, but we have a couple of people that are, that should be really interesting, to give some different viewpoints on some things that we all know about. And other than that, it's just the normal Friday night shenanigans tournament. We'll be doing some tournament recaps. So we've been, we'll hit all the hot button issues and just to have some fun.
Love it. Guys, go check them out every Friday night. Bass and Beer Radio. They're on YouTube. They're on Facebook. It's absolutely a good time. Go check out the gang. Paul, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, boss.
Oh, thanks for having me, Honest. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too. All righty, guys. And you know what? That call was so good. That's all we're going to be doing for the phone lines today. So, again, the phone line, guys, usually is 667-307-8583. Yeah, covered everything I wanted to do. This is not a bad impromptu show. I apologize, everyone. I know we had this really cool thing set up to do the upper James River smallmouth and muskie. We're going to be doing that later on, though. I promise you there. We'll get that going. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for listening. If you want to, head on over to Patreon. Our spots are filling up fast. We are under 12 Patreon memberships, only 12 Patreon memberships left to join the club before I'm shutting that thing down. Just to make this thing exclusive. And then also just to make sure they get tackled into this really nice cheap rates before we make some adjustments for 2026. We have a bunch of fishing tournaments that we do and a ton of great perks, benefits, and discounts. So go check us up over there on Patreon. I really appreciate it. If it wasn't for Patreon, guys, none of this would be available. I couldn't do any of this. Okay, sponsors don't really exist. And so the only reason I can come to you with so much content is because of all the Patreon supporters that help keep this show going. So if you feel like you really like what we're doing here, go become a Patreon member while there's still some spots left. I would really appreciate it. And we will see you next Monday with Billy Cole Guide Service, of Smith Mountain Lake Guide Service. So we'll see you next Monday on Monday Night Live. Bye. You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.